Hi everyone, Gethany Trentano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Lightning Bolt album,
I am here for absolutely no reason whatsoever.
Lightning Bolt is a Rhode Island musical duo, easily one of the best musical duos of the 2000s. They had a fantastic run for 10 years with a handful of great noise rock albums: Ride the Skies, Hyper Magic Mountain, Wonderful Rainbow, and the album Earthly Delights in 2009. The only real lull in their album discography is a 2012 B-sides album, Oblivion Hunter. Kinda demo quality, a little messy, sort of reminded me of their debut live album. But the rest of their discography is an overwhelming, atomically explosive, colorful, abrasive, and psychedelic freefall into the mouth of a volcano. And they've been able to keep up this level of intensity with a pretty basic setup for years. Just drums and bass. Lightning Bolt is two guys, but they make enough noise for five. First, we have Brian Chippendale's dizzying, frantic drumming, and he also does vocals as well, and the way that he records his voice, I'm not 100% sure on what the apparatus is or what kind of microphone he's using, but the way it's incorporated into Lightning Bolt's recordings, it sounds like he's singing at you through the talk box of like a fast food drive-thru. And then we have Brian Gibson's bass guitar, which he plays a lot more like a traditional electric guitar. He's riffing, he's shredding, he's playing leads on the bass guitar, he's throwing tons of effects into the mix too, like reverbs and a loop pedal, distortion. And all of these things have been improved upon and sort of finely tuned as Lightning Bolt progressed from Ride the Skies to Earthly Delights. The drumming, the vocals, the bass loops, and the layers actually got so intense on the album Hyper Magic Mountain. When that album first came out, I had to stop playing it because I kept giving myself migraine headaches. And even though their music is seriously intense, there's something kind of fun and absurd and demented about it too. Now, even though I do love the sound of Lightning Bolt, I love the idea behind this duo. It's a sound that I imagine is pretty difficult to stretch out for 5 records. But despite the delay, despite the doubt, I still went into this record with high hopes. I mean, with nearly every Lightning Bolt album, I kind of go into it wondering what they're going to do next to keep their sound and keep their style entertaining, and they've always managed to pull through. And with this new record here, at their core, they're really still the same band delivering a lot of the same trademark sounds. The grimy, roaring bass guitar, intense drumming, fuzzed out, brittle vocals, all thrown together in a whirlwind of psych, punk, noise, insanity. Over the runtime of this album, Lightning Bolt manages to toss in a few new or different ideas, but maybe the most thing about this record at first listen, if you are a Lightning Bolt fan, is that it's not quite as heavy or densely layered as their more recent efforts. This record definitely has a raw aesthetic, but still packs a lot of punch. Maybe not quite as raw or as noisy as Oblivion Hunter, but not as overdubbed and as tightly put together and as flashy as an album like Hyper Magic Mountain. It seems like on this new record here, Lightning Bolt is really trying to keep this record afloat with some great, intense performances. This LP kicks off with the Metal East, which features these rolling bass triplets and this driving snare drum. There are these little ascending and descending melodies in between these verses of frenzied vocals. And for the most part, it really sounds like Lightning Bolt as usual, aside from kind of a weird, high-pitched, noisy, chaotic freakout in the middle of the song, and a point toward the end of the track where I think we're getting like a weird keyboard riff or something. I wouldn't be surprised if this sound came from Brian's bass as well, but there is something kind of synthetic about the sound that kind of struck me, like, oh, I've never really heard this sound in a Lightning Bolt song before. But it lasts such a short while that it really doesn't leave an impact for me on the song as a whole. Despite a couple of novel ideas, again, this track just feels like Lightning Bolt by the numbers, which makes me wonder, I'm not sure if stripping things back was kind of the best idea for this record, because it's not like alternatively they've kind of found a new avenue or kind of a new direction to go in with this simpler approach. There are some longer cuts on here that might number up to 6 or 11 minutes where the playing gets a little more chaotic. There might be some more psychedelic effects in the mix, like with the epic closer, Snow White, or the very thick and chaotic Dream, Genie, and the song Over the River and Through the Woods as well, which is actually one of my favorite tracks here until the point where the entire groove of the song changes and it feels like Brian Gibson starts delivering this kind of basic, straightforward, dancey bass riff that sounds like something off of a Death from Above record, at which point the song really starts to drag. The shorter cuts on here are more straightforward, more concise, pack some energy, but maybe the riff writing isn't the best that Lightning Bolt has ever delivered. I love the galloping groove of the song Horsepower, but without a fantastic riff to ride that groove, because we're really kind of getting one note riding this groove a lot of the time, it gets a little redundant. This song makes me think back to older Lightning Bolt cuts like Two Towers, where for a majority of the track, minutes at a time, we're like getting this one riff, this one groove, and yet Lightning Bolt found ways to kind of keep it intense, keep it interesting, keep it hypnotic, just by varying the grooves slightly as they continued to play it. And of course, Wonderful Rainbow's incredibly crushing sound helped keep that track interesting too. A crushing sound, an extremely crushing sound that I don't think this record quite has. There are also ideas I like from the song King of My World, like the fluttering lead melodies all over this track and the intense wall of sound that accompanies them and the jagged drum beat, but the song just takes so long to get going, and once these fluttering melodies and the wall of sound introduce themselves, they just kind of pop in with no real tension or build or anything. This just feels like a really weakly assembled track. Thankfully, the song kind of picks things up with an interesting dynamic sound, some really primal, low-key drum beats, some quiet chants, some droney bass, and then all of a sudden, blast beats and loud riffs and ah! I also love the fluttering, ascending, delayed intervals toward the end of this track. Another example of a sharp idea on this record, of which I think there are many on this album. They're just not encased into some of Lightning Bolt's best songs. But really, I only feel that way about the first half of this album. The second half of this LP I actually think makes for a great Lightning Bolt record. It's fast, it's frenzied, it's sonically intense, the performances are great. Lightning Bolt proves they're still one of the most unique bands in noise rock, even if unintentionally they sort of show how limited their sound is. I'm feeling a light to decent 7 on this LP. Transition, if you've given this album a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Lightning Bolt, Fantasy Empire, forever.